Welcome to Speaking of Entrepreneurship, a podcast powered by the Center for Entrepreneurs at Cuyahoga Community College's Corporate College. Here, we dive into real conversations with industry experts, innovative founders, and business leaders who share their insights, challenges, and strategies for success. Whether you're launching a startup, scaling your business, or just exploring the entrepreneurial mindset, this is your space to learn, adapt, and thrive.
Kumar Arora is with us today. He is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and consultant behind many startups and brands. Some of his ventures include Sora Sushi, Ilthy, Futureland, and too many more to list right now. So let's get started. Welcome, Kumar. We are so happy to have you at
glad to be here.
College. So I know that there's lots to cover. Let's start with the logical place with your early days. I read about your father being a big influence in your life. So let's talk a little bit about that.
You know, my journey into entrepreneurship, I feel like in some ways started at a very young age, but I didn't know it, much like most entrepreneurs. Both my parents, my mom and dad, they always wanted me to learn and be curious. My mom was on the art, an artist. My dad was a scientist. So for both of them, they were creators to some degree. So little as I know that they wanted me to create as well. So that was really my beginnings of it all, where I just found myself tinkering, programming, designing, all that fun stuff. And it led me down that path of entrepreneurship at an early age. Yeah.
So I know that you got to start here in Cleveland. You went out to Los Angeles. You made your way back to Cleveland. What had you started your entrepreneurial journey in Cleveland before you went to Los Angeles?
Not quite. My journey started at Ohio State when I was in Columbus. So I, at that time, was pursuing a lot of different, I was doing graphic design. I was doing event planning, doing a lot of tours with artists and celebrities and whatnot. And it was around that time when I had just graduated, and I go to my counselor. This is 2008 during the recession, mind you. And
yeah.
I go to my counselor. I'm like, okay, well, I have to start applying for jobs. And she's like, if you can't find a job, you can also make one. And it was really that moment I realized, wow, maybe I've been an entrepreneur this whole time, because I was already doing that through college. And it was the starting point of it all, where I then realized, like, I have a business now, and that's what I've been doing. So, 21, 22, I was working on those events. I was doing graphic design basically full time while in school. And that really led me down the path of, that solo entrepreneurship, freelancer into a business. I ended up exiting my first business in 2010, which was a web development agency. And after that, I've been investing and building within Cleveland and Ohio ever since.
Yeah. That sounds really exciting. And to think about that young, you know, oftentimes 21, 22, we're still trying to figure out what do we want to do with our lives. So having that start. So what did it take for you to get into that first business? Like, what made you think, oh, I can do graphic design. I'm going to...
it's all about something that you love in the beginning. I think any small business owner or startup, you have to love what you're doing. That's the basis of it all. But at that point, how do you take it from a hobby or a passion into something, that could become a business? And that's the idea of commercializing what you can do. How can I offer this? How can I sell it? How can I package it in a way that somebody can use it for, business gain? And I think that's really when I began to think about the idea of building products, building brands through design, creative, marketing. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I've been doing it now for 20 years. So my journey of entrepreneurship has led me to build companies, invest in companies, exit companies, and at the same time, lose money along the way too, because those battle scars where you can learn a lot too.
Yeah. So I saw a clip, I think it was, that said, have a story. So folks are always asking, how do I get folks interested in my business? How do I get folks to invest in my business? How do I get a market to be interested in my business? And I saw where you said have a story. You want to tell our listeners a little bit more about that?
Gosh, I said that maybe 13 some years ago.
Is that right?
I would say. I don't think I had as much gray hair back then. It was something at the time in the early days of not just social media, but media as a whole, and how brands can not necessarily hide behind their logos, where you could really create an emotional component to your business. And I'm a big believer that, we should follow a business just like how we follow a CEO, you know? And I think that when you have a story to tell, it adds the human element that's sometimes missing in a business to get people to connect to it, right? When you can tell a story, you can give them a reason to fall in love. But if you don't have that story, you're just a company, right? And brands and companies these days have to have that, because if you don't have it, someone else will have it before you.
I know you have to grab people quick. We talk about that all the time. You got to grab folks' attention quickly.
And I had said that even before Instagram Reels and all that stuff. So it's funny now looking back on what I said nearly 13, 14 years ago, that, you know, we need it now more than ever, you know?
So you take me really nicely to my next thought, which was, can you share with us your philosophy or strategy around using Instagram and Facebook? I saw you use chat bots, and is it Chat Fuel? Do I have that right?
It was, yes. I did a project and I did a commercial with Meta, and then they flew me out for that, which was a really great project. We did that back 3 years ago. So kind of in the early stages of the commercialization of AI, you know, when it comes to social media and, you know, Instagram and whatnot, my strategy for my clients and brands has always been about authenticity. You know, if you're not authentic, you really have no purpose, right? Social media is not a bulletin board. It's meant not only for storytelling, but a way to communicate with your audience. And I think on that time with Chat Fuel, I talk about the two-way street, because now more than ever, brands can communicate with their consumers. You can't do that with TV and radio, right? You can actually DM them, message them, hear their problems, learn from them, and vice versa, you know? And I think that's such a powerful thing to be able to, you know, have a conversation with a customer through the internet, right? And that's something brand new. I think a lot of companies are still learning how to do that in an authentic way, but it adds this new layer that we've never had. And now that we've got AI on our side too, it actually can help us scale that idea.
Yeah. I think even having this ability to do a podcast, and then, as we were talking about earlier, then just kind of splice it up into smaller segments and put those things on your Instagram or whatever your social media is. It just exposes you in different ways and with audiences.
Yeah.
And we are definitely in a time where everybody wants to move at warp speed and decisions are being made really quickly. So entrepreneurs have to think about that and how they get in front of folks. But let's go back a little bit. When you were in Los Angeles, I think one of Cleveland's pride and joys in LeBron James.
That's right.
Somehow found you. And you wound up on his show, Cleveland Hustles. Let's talk about that a little bit. And how
what a fun time, you know, to be able to document my story on television. You could say I'm a washed up reality star now. It was 2016. It was a great year for Cleveland. I was living in LA at the time and got to be on a part of a show. I was casted as one of the investors on Cleveland Hustles. At the time, it was number 2 on the network on CNBC. And after that, it aired worldwide, you know, in all different countries and all different languages, which was such a great time to not only highlight Cleveland, but get to see the work of startups and small businesses and what's happening here. So I was fortunate, and that was almost 10 years ago now, give or take. It was a chance to just see all the different entrepreneurs and business folks that are in our city, you know, and get to meet so many of them and you know, invest and build with them. So it was a great time, and very fortunate that Spring Hill and LeBron's camp, you know, has you know, recognized the work that I did at such a young age, and it's even better that I'm still getting to work with them, you know, and my team and my company. We still actually work with their foundation. We do help with their merchandising, their museum. So, you know, it's just an opportunity to kind of carry that forward too and continue that long-term game.
Yeah, I saw where it said that you, while on that show, you invested in Old City Soda.
I did.
Did that work out well?
You know, it unfortunately didn't. You know, that goes back to the battle scars that I talk about. I think that you learn so much when you lose a game, when you lose, but the beauty is you have to come back and pick yourself back up. So that was a tough one to lose, you know, but for me, at least as an investor, I got to learn hospitality. I got to learn consumer packaged goods. And I was fortunate that I worked at Real Good Foods after that as their CMO and helped scale that brand. And even now with Sora, it's back in hospitality. So while I may have lost on that investment, the work I have learned carries forward into the next brand. So in some ways, I haven't given up yet.
Well, that's the thing too about being an entrepreneur. You have to be able to withstand some risk.
Yep.
and some level of risk. And in our discovery track, we teach that about if you're risk averse, being in business for yourself is probably not the place to be.
Yeah, you have to be relentless.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit back to Cleveland. What made you decide to come back and bring your talent here? We're really happy you did.
I'm glad to be back. Honestly, it's been great. When it came to my thought process, as much as I can wish that I chose to do this, COVID kind of sped up the timeline for me. It was a combination of a couple things where I really started to think about what was happening in Cleveland. We are entering a renaissance. There's so many great things that are happening. I was watching from afar and obviously visiting back. I have investments in business here, but it was a combination of a lot of things, friends, family, COVID had kind of made things happen. But I also think that it kind of created a new way of life. It is more normal to be on conference calls and Zoom calls. It is easier to travel through Cleveland. So I'm glad to be home, personally and professionally, and I think I can do a lot more work here.
Yeah. And then did you create ILTHY when you got back here?
I invested in ILTHY back in 2011. So we are now in our 15 years of business.
Tell me what those letters stand for again.
It stands for I'd love to help you.
I'd love to help
So
you.
we do a lot of social impact work. A lot of our projects have like a collaborative element, but we also try to find ways to give back too. So it's a combination of wear good and feel good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so Futureland is also one of those kind of give back projects.
It is,
also.
yeah.
We here at Corporate College, we're happy to be involved with the
and
first,
an official sponsor.
Yeah, with the
that's
first
right. Thank you.
Futureland. It was a great experience for us and gave us an opportunity to roll out our Center for Entrepreneur. And we had great attendance at that. So thanks for bringing that here.
Of course.
What brought you to Futureland and just talk about how that relates to your journey.
Oh yeah, my life's work and the ethos of everything that I do has been built around community. Whether that's my early days in nightlife and entertainment, to a community at ILTHY, and then obviously at Futureland. Aurora Ventures, my parent company, has always been looking for the right communities along with the right operators when it comes to an investment. So when it came to Futureland, and I heard about the project and what we were doing, this is even before the name was created. It was Mayor Bibb's vision to help build entrepreneurship, creative, and tech in the land, but also for diverse creatives, right? All shapes and sizes, all races, all genders, right? So for me, when I saw that, I don't want to have to move away to LA again. I don't want my future to do the same thing. So how do we stop that? Things like Futureland will help, right? Because it gives the opportunity for access, investment, workshops, and just the ability to network, So to me, it's important because I'm doing this for my younger self from 20 years ago.
Yeah, there were so many young people and tech people and entrepreneur and creative types at Futureland. It was wonderful to see that in downtown Cleveland. They were all over the place.
And something that's digestible and consumable, right? Not everybody wants to go to a workshop or, sometimes even reading a book can be hard. But when you attend something like Futureland, there's an element of culture and creative that does make things more easier and more entertaining to learn too.
Yeah. So you kind of mix civic responsibility, social responsibility with ILTHY, and this whole entrepreneurial spirit all into the bundle that winds up being Aurora Enterprises?
Ventures,
Aurora Ventures. As you kind of navigate through that, what are some of the things that you know now that you wish your younger self had known?
When I looked at even just the early days of social media or the things that we know about our world today, I never really thought about the world in the future. I think we all knew AI was coming at some point, but we didn't know how fast it was coming. I think what it tells me now, even for the future for myself, but also what I look back on is that you need to adapt for an ever-evolving world, right? Whether it's marketing, creative, just business as a whole, expect a lot of changes, and be prepared for those, because it is those who prepare and think about the new inventions, the new technology, the new way of life. They're the ones who will adapt faster and win, when it comes to the game of life. So it's something I kind of wish I thought about a little bit more, because you don't want to get caught or stuck in a certain way. Pivoting is important, and I think that that's something I wish I could tell myself in the past is like, be prepared that a business might not work, that you have to pivot, or be prepared that there might be new tech out there that can make things easier and more efficient,
We hear a lot from young entrepreneurs that their biggest need is access to capital.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't think they're quite ready for that, and there probably is a bigger need. But what would you say to a startup or a young entrepreneur, young in the business cycle, with respect to access to capital?
I think that I do agree that access to capital or funding sources is very difficult in Northeast Ohio. That's one of the many things that I hope to be a part of to help change. But I do also think that when it comes to a business, right, and if you need to diagnose a business, you can already think of the things that you know you need tomorrow, right? You can write that out, and it could be probably as easy as a 5-bulleted list. If you could take that list and then distill it down to maybe 2 or 3 things that could change the business, oftentimes it's sales or cash flow. If you know you need more of it, then you can go work on it, right? So the idea is that you need to make things as simple as possible and try to figure out what that is and then answer it. If you can answer as quick as you can move to the next problem. I think a lot of times business owners have to wear so many hats.
Yes.
But oftentimes, yes, those hats are all important, but you probably don't always need to wear certain ones, right? You can wait on some of them to grow in other places first, because that other hat could also solve other ones too. I think that's often forgotten with startups. The second part of that really is getting to the MVP status, right? Can you create a product that is something you can commercialize? Can you actually make money on this, right? Can you make some money to show an investor, right? You have to be able to get to that point of 1.0, then to stay in 0. And if you can't do that, it's hard for an investment to come into place.
Yeah, so you can't get stuck
Yeah.
on any one problem or any one area, because like you said, there's so many that as an entrepreneur, so many hats you have to wear, so many different things you have to address.
And I say this all the time to even clients, even from a branding and marketing standpoint. You don't need to try to do everything under the sun. Sometimes you just need to do 1 or 2 things really good, and that's your answer, right? We see that today in a lot of great examples of business where they might just do one really good thing right, and it just works.
Yeah.
So sometimes simplifying is the answer too.
Yeah. Having a lot of luck sometimes is a good thing.
Yeah, luck
too.
luck's not always a bad thing either.
Right, absolutely. So are there more business ventures on the horizon for Kumar?
I'm taking a break. Actually, it's been some time. I made some investments last year. Cleveland Kitchen, which is based here. I made an investment with them. Great guys, growing very fast. And then VO Med Spa, another one that's headquartered here in Cleveland. I made some investments with them. So expanding into CPG in the wellness space, but taking a break for now. Really want to work on some civic stuff. Excited to be one of the lead winners of the Transformative Arts Fund, which we got. There's 7 of us that have won the fund that came out last year. Doing a lot of great mural work and transformative work through the city, through the arts. So
we run the streets.
It's Artists Run the Streets.
Artists Run the Streets.
Yeah, and we just did an event at City Hall to highlight a lot of great Black artists for Black History Month. The next project we have is coming up in April called The World Is Yours. It's a beautiful basketball court renovation project happening right next to Riddall Farms at Otter Park. And the focus is for Black Maternal Health Week. So it's a beautiful mural right on the court of a mother holding up her son, and her son is throwing a globe on the court. It's a very beautiful piece by Glenn Infante, who's part of our lead artist collective. And again, the idea is that we need to solve that crisis of what's happening with Black mothers out there and for the fertility issues that go with that.
Yeah. In Cleveland.
The
medical capital of the world, right? Well, thank you so much. As we wrap this up, I want to just ask, are there any words of advice or wisdom that you would leave with our audience?
As I was driving here thinking about where I was 20 years ago in college and even just what would help them, I thought about what I would want to hear for myself. And I know how hard it is in school. I know that it's tough to learn and you really have to try to motivate yourself, And I thought about the concept of just reading as a whole, right? We absorb knowledge through reading, right? The most smartest, most educated people are often always reading. And I thought about the idea of not forcing yourself to read, but read what you love until you love what you read, right? And that line is so powerful, right? Read what you love until you love what you read. If you get deep on a subject, you get deep on an idea, you get deep on a passion of yours and you read about it, it gives you the power to read. And if you can do that, sky's the limit, and it takes you in a whole new playing field where you are now obsessed with learning. And I think that it is those who read about politics and the world and business who I think are so well-rounded in life who then can become very successful. So yes, it's tough in school, but if you learn to love to read, it really does answer a lot of things.
Yeah, I've been telling my children all their life, reading is fundamental. So now I'm going to tell them after talking to you,
Read what you love till you love what you
you
read.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
of
for
course.
joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast, brought to you by the Center for Entrepreneurs at Corporate College. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow entrepreneurs. Tune back in to stay connected with us for more insights and resources to help you build, innovate, and thrive.